Hello and welcome to this new series that's going to be on the channel. It's going to be called Smifficle On, and this is where I'm going to give my opinions on Formula 1. First of all, I'd like to apologise about the gameplay. It's not the best, but hopefully it's okay enough to watch. So I writ a few things down on what I want to talk about. And firstly, I want to talk about Marcus Ericsson going to Sauber. Secondly, the driver market. And third, I'll probably talk about Hamilton and Rosberg and my opinions on the championship. So without further ado, let's get into it. So as we heard after Adrian Sutil's brilliant qualifying for Sauber at Austin, Marcus Ericsson has signed for Sauber for the 2015 season, and my opinion on it, to be honest, is 100% money motivated. For me, Marcus Ericsson's probably been the poorest driver on the grid. As a Kobayashi fan, you might think, well, you're a bit biased, but the facts are Kobayashi has owned him pretty much all season. The only reason why Marcus Ericsson beat him in Japan and Russia was because Marcus Ericsson had the new updates. Kobayashi had to run all the old parts, and were not even, close to Marcus Ericsson. And for me, how people can believe that Marcus Ericsson turned around about a 2.5 second advantage over Kobayashi in qualifying is pretty much naive. But in terms of Sauber, I don't blame them for taking on Ericsson, because it's obvious they've took him on for money. They need the money. It was like in 2013 when they took on Gutierrez. They need the money. And, people say, well, if we had 3-car teams, you could have 2 talented drivers and then a pay driver in the third. But I don't agree with 3-car teams at all. But, for the second Sauber seat, I would probably say Guido van der Garde's going to get it. I mean, people say, well, yeah, he's another pay driver, but for me, he had some great drives for Caterham last season, qualifying in Spa, qualifying in Monaco, and he's a good driver. And I'm surprised Caterham didn't keep him on for 2014, sorry. And I'm surprised that Sauber didn't even give him a race seat, because, let's be honest, I think he's better than Gutierrez. And Sutil, yes, he had a good qualifying in Austin, but really this season, he's crashed too many times for my liking. He's a very good driver in terms of, he used to be. When I remember him for Force India and Spiker, he had some very good performances. But for this season, he hasn't really, done that good in terms of, he's been average against Gutierrez. And for me, I don't rate Gutierrez at all. He's probably, in my opinion, one of the worst drivers on the grid. But hopefully next season we can see Sauber get into the points. Whatever I think of Manish Kaltenborn or Marcus Ericsson, it's sad to see a team with the history of Sauber struggling. They built some decent cars, in the last few years, 2010, 2011, 2012. They built solid cars that, weren't the best, but they managed to get them solid points finishes. And I think, hopefully, we can see Sauber in the points and competing and back to where they were in, say, 2013, in the middle part of 2013, where Hulkenberg was doing a good job. So, yeah. Secondly, I'd like to talk about the driver market, and you probably heard me ramble on about 4 minutes about Sauber. So let's talk about our next topic, and that's going to be the driver market. And, just going on to McLaren firstly, and the rumours about that Jenson Button might be leaving for Fernando Alonso. And to be honest, I'm not a fan of Jenson Button, but he deserves, in my opinion, he deserves to keep his seat at McLaren. And, I think he's been better than Magnussen. The points suggest he's been better than Magnussen, but, we all know that Jenson Button is not a strong qualifier. But what we do know is on a Sunday, he's a very strong race driver. And I think he deserves to keep his seat. I know it's hard for McLaren because Kevin Magnussen's only about 21, 22. And he's doing a decent job. It's not like, he's doing an absolute rubbish job. He's doing a good job, and he's not that far off Jenson Button, and that's the problem for McLaren, because do they keep the guy that's a world champion who they know is going to get them solid results, who, for me, you know, never really puts the team at risk. He always does a solid job. He don't go for banzai moves or anything. He's got the experience to know what he's doing, you know, and he's doing a decent job, Jensen. And on the other hand, they've got Kevin Magnussen, who's a feisty racer. He attacks. He's aggressive in his defence. But I tell you, you know, at Monza for me, he was very unfortunate to get a penalty, and that's what you want to see from a driver, that feistiness. And you know, for me, it's a shame if one of them gets dropped for the other one. Hopefully, you know, to be honest, I'm not a fan of either driver, but they both keep the seat, and Alonso stays at Ferrari. But you know, that is certainly probably not going to happen, because Sebastian Vettel looks like he's joined Ferrari, and I doubt they're going to pay off Kimi Räikkönen again, despite his poor performances. You know, do I think Fernando Alonso is going to join McLaren? Yes, I do, and I think Kevin Magnussen is going to be alongside him. Hopefully Alonso, if he does join McLaren, can win that championship he's been craving. He deserves it. I mean, over the last couple of years, you know, he's drove brilliantly, and I don't think anyone could argue that he don't deserve a championship. And hopefully, you know, Jenson Button, if he does leave McLaren, can still stay in F1, because, in my opinion, like I've said earlier on, he deserves to stay in F1, because, for me, there's other drivers in F1 who are keeping their seats next season that maybe you could argue they don't deserve a seat. The other places up for grabs, there's not really, you know, any clear sort of places. Everything's sort of waiting for the Alonso and McLaren sort of thing to happen. You know, there's obviously Toro Rosso, the second seat at Toro Rosso that's up for grabs. I feel that Jean-Eric Vergne deserves another season. I feel, you know, he's done a very good job. Do I feel he's been better than Danny Kvyat? You know, for me, from Singapore onwards, yeah. But over the season, it's been close. The points suggest that Vergne's dominated him, but Singapore, I think it was 11-9, and Singapore, Jean-Eric Vergne finished 6th, so it would have been 19-9. I think it was. I'm not sure, but I know he got a really big point finish in Singapore, which helped him get past, put a big margin between him and Kvyat. But you know, it's hard for Toro Rosso because they've got other drivers coming up like Alex Lynn and Carlos Sainz Jr., who you could argue they both deserve a chance at F1, and that's the problem when you got so many good young drivers coming up out the academy. You know, you've got to sort of pick the right ones. You know, people were surprised when they picked Kvyat last year. People were saying last year why they didn't pick Carlos Sainz Jr. or Felix da Costa, and you know, yeah, it was a big surprise when they picked Danny Kvyat, but when he had his first practice session in Austin last season, you know, he did a very good job. Do I think that, you know, they're going to pick a youngster? I don't think so, because the reason they pick Max Verstappen, you know, is because he's apparently going to be the next Ayrton Senna, and I don't believe they can have another youngster next to him. I believe they've got to have someone like Jean-Eric Vergne, sort of, you know, from him to learn from, because I know that Red Bull's never sort of thought of that philosophy, but you know, Verstappen's 16, he's just come out of F3. For me, I've seen some of his F3. I mean, I saw the one at Imola, and if you try some of them moves in F1, he'll get moaned at by the likes of Massa and other drivers, because you cannot try some of them moves, because he'll be off the track and out the Grand Prix. And I think he needs someone like Vergne who's going to just teach him, you know, about F1. So going on to the last point quickly about who's going to win the championship. In Austin, we saw Hamilton effectively, you know, I thought, controlled the race. I know he was second for quite a long time, but he got past and then he sort of just controlled the race. They were both evenly paced, but Hamilton, I feel, is a better driver. I feel You know, I know Rosberg's had a bad luck over the last few races, but Hamilton, yeah, Rosberg's been the better qualifier, but Hamilton, for me, on race day, has been way better than Rosberg. That's something Rosberg needs to improve. Going into Brazil, I still think Hamilton's going to beat Rosberg at Brazil, and I think the only way Rosberg's going to beat Hamilton is by probably a failure for Hamilton. But Rosberg needs to pull it out the bag, and hopefully, you know, we can see a good championship battle. Personally, whoever's winning coming up to Abu Dhabi, I want them to win the championship. So on that note, I'm sorry that I didn't talk much about the championship battle, but I hope you've enjoyed the episode, and I'll see you next time.